Alright, so this is part 2 of my post custom map panel brain dump from MineCon. Um, I'm going over some notes that I had made for myself to possibly share in the panel, and I'm going to continue. What do you want from players? So be upfront about this when you put your forum thread out there. You're never going to get everything you want out of your players, but two things that you should probably ask for, actually one thing that you should probably ask for is when they do playthroughs to put a link back to your video. And I already mentioned this in part 1, but go out there and search YouTube to see when they're playing your map. I touched on this a little bit in the panel, but what are you good at? So knowing what you're good at is very important when you make your first custom map. Focus on what you're good at, and then go off on the side, put your map out there. Let people know that it's got great builds or that it's got whatever in it, and then go off and experiment with the other things and start including more advanced topics in your map later. If your first map is garbage, that's fine. Your second map will be slightly less garbage. Your third map will be pretty good. And by your fourth map, fifth map, you're going to be an expert. And some people are going to come up that curve a lot quicker or slower. But know your strengths, play to those strengths. You'll hear more about that in the audio of the panel. Planning versus organic. So I am notoriously an over planner, especially when it comes to maps, because I like to set deadlines for myself and I like to track how many hours I'm investing in this game. I think that's good. I've put some templates out on my forum thread that you could use. Yes, I know they're a little bit out of date. I think I created them in 1.7. And now we're at the full release of MineCon. So like the texture pack planning template definitely needs to get updated. I'll do that at some point. But so I think everyone should have a plan. If your plan looks like a piece of paper with a bunch of lines connecting circles and some notes, that's fine. Plan the flow of your map. If your plan looks like a detailed list of everything you need to build, that's awesome. If your plan includes timestamps of how long you want each thing to take, that's fine. If you want to make a separate plan for designing your map, separate from developing your map, separate from testing your map, separate from publishing your map and then supporting it on the forums, that's what I do, and it's really helpful for me. My attention span, I have a project list of mine for Minecraft, which is probably about like a dozen things that will get done, and then maybe 100 things that will not get done. I don't know if you can see, but like here's the first part of the list, and I've got a separate list on my other computer as well. But yeah, so I got tons of projects in my plan, but like I'm not going to have time for them all. When I'm in the middle of building a map, I have to be ready to be organic. So what that means is, if I plan to have a 20 by 20 room, and it's going to have a bed and a furnace and a chest in it and some pictures on the walls, when I actually get into that room and build it and look around, I may find that the room really only needs to be 10 by 10 to create more of a enclosed atmosphere. Or if I build a cave, and the classic example here is in Mars Mission, in the worm cave. So I have I've got 3 mechanisms in there. 2 of them where worms will kind of pop up under the ground and move along, kind of like if you've ever seen the movie Tremors or Dune, where the sandworms are moving right under the sand. And then I have a 3rd mechanism where a giant worm pops up out of the ground at the end. And when I actually got into building it, the area that I picked to build it in was definitely smaller than I had envisioned it, partly because I was just getting really frustrated with all the redstone, but partly because it's just the way it turned out. And when I finished that encounter, I stepped back and said, man, this is more enclosed than I wanted. If you're not looking exactly at the right place, you might miss it. And then I was like, I kind of like it this way because it does feel enclosed, and you're right there against these worms, and something just happened off to your side, even if you didn't see it. You know that when you mined out that block, some pistons fired, and you're like, uh-oh, what was that? And then you go back into the back part of the cave and you see the second half of the encounter, and you're immediately attacked by spiders and silverfish, and you're like, oh man, what's going on here? And then the second iteration of the worm, if you're standing in the entrance to the room and you pull the lever, which is the robot arm, you will see the worm move right in front of you, and then if you follow its path to the right, like with your eyes, if you turn to the right, you'll see the big worm coming up out of the ground. I think out of, let's just say, six or so YouTube videos, 3 people saw it the way I wanted and 3 people didn't, but at the end they all got the same effect. So I thought about redoing that room, making it bigger. I ended up not, so I went with the organic. Also, a lot of times when I do plan out a room, back to my first example with a bed, the furnace, and a chest, my plan might only have those details in it, and when I get in there I say, you know what, I'd really like to have a table. So I'll add a piston with the head extended facing up as a table. So allow yourself to be organic in your map as well. And don't even feel bad about going back, like after you've released the map, just to add 1 or 2 small details, and you know, keep practicing being organic as well. Does the download count matter? So I'm hoping that Blame the Controller, Jagarbov, Kupo, and Prof. Snape will watch this video and get to this point, because I'm going to turn this one out to them. If not, I'll try to remember to put this on one of our podcasts that we do, the Map Makers After Hour podcast. So does download count matter for your map? I will say yes and no, and my short answer is that, and I think Blame feels strongly that it does count because it creates a sense of value to people browsing the forum, and people are attracted, for better or worse, to a map that claims to have 20,000 downloads versus a map that says they claim to have 100 downloads. To me, that's pretty much completely ignored when I review your maps on my forums. I don't care how many downloads you have. That is not an indicator of how good your map is, regardless of what you would think it is an indicator, in my opinion. And the other thing is, like, when I almost never even look at my download count. When I upload a new version of a map, I just delete the old version because I don't want people to accidentally get that version. So I've actually lost all history of my download count. I have a rough idea of what my download counts are, and I'm very happy with them. So I don't really feel like I need to validate myself with a number there. Pacing. Pacing is a whole topic unto itself, but when you make your map and you test it, try to test it like a player. It's going to be very hard for you to do that because you're the map maker. But just one thing you could do is literally draw out on a piece of paper. And I don't think I have a pen. I don't think I have a pen handy, but draw a circle for encounter number 1, and draw a circle for encounter number 2, and draw a circle for encounter number 3. Okay? And connect them with arrows. And when you play your map, this is a place of action. Or let's say this is your out of character room. This is your rules, right? Now you have a walkway here. Now you have let's just say you have a mob spawner here. So you have a fight. Then you have another hallway, and then you have a redstone or a jumping puzzle. Then you have another hallway leading to your end, okay? Skull and crossbones, that happens a lot, right? So you've got 4 major encounters in your map, and then you've got 1, 2, 3 pathways in between the encounters where there's basically downtime in your map. How much time do you want the player to spend in each room and traveling in between the rooms? And does that pacing feel good to you? You can also look at pacing in terms of, are you giving them leather gear, stone gear, iron gear, diamond gear? Or are you giving them all your diamond gear up front, and then maybe these are refills of diamond gear throughout? Are you giving them 1 scoring item, 5 scoring items, 1 scoring item, 20 scoring items? Or are you doing 2, 2, 2, 2, or 2, 2, 2, 10 to make them feel like they've really got a great reward? So just think about your pacing, make it the way that you want it to be in your map. Okay, last one for this video is my style. Okay, I don't think I touched on this in the panel, but I know I've commented about this in the MMA AHP Mapmakers After Hour podcast. So some people start with a style of creating a large room or a large structure and then weaving a storyline into it. Some people start with a redstone puzzle that they want to make and then fitting it into a room and then a story, etc., etc. There's all different styles of map making. So back to the point on knowing what your strengths are, and then knowing your style is very important. So my style of map making, and well, at the risk of using the same visual over again. Let's say I was going to make a skull and crossbones in Minecraft, okay? Some people are going to start up here and say, I want to make a skull and crossbones. It needs to be 50 blocks high by 50 blocks wide. It needs to have a sphere in the center, etc., etc. The way that I do this is I look for the smallest detail. Oh, this front tooth right here. This front tooth is going to be 1 block, and it's going to have to be, oh, no, it's probably going to be 2 blocks wide by 3 blocks high, and it's going to have a black block on 2 black blocks on either side of it to differentiate it from the next tooth. And then I count going across, and I say, oh shoot, I'm going to need like 100, 200 blocks for teeth. Okay, what if I make the front tooth a white block, and then a gray block, and then a white block? So I start with the lowest level of detail, and then I build out from there, and that determines the scale. Now, at some point, you have to start at the detail and start moving out, but you can't wait till the end to have the whole picture, right? So I'll start with the smallest detail. That will give me the overall sense of scale when I kind of multiply it out. And then I'll zoom back into another detail, like let's say this eye socket. I want this to be ice and black cloth, or I want this to be hollow. And then I might go touch on the nose, and then these nice little indents here, and then the bones, right? So I'll start at the lowest detail, I'll get the macro scale, and then I'll go in and find individual parts that I want to quote-unquote map out in my mind before I build the whole thing together. And then when I step back and finish it and I look at it, I pretty much take the reverse effort in grading whether or not I have done a good job on it. Is I'll look at the pieces, they look good, they fit together in the right proportions, overall scale looks good, and then, yep, my focal point ended up tying it all together. So guess what? 12 minutes, 13 minutes, I guess you're going to get a part 3 of this, and this is all off the cuff, but this is the kind of thing that really inspires me and keeps me making maps, is just, introspectively looking at my style and sharing that with people, and hopefully someone will comment and say they got something out of this. Thanks, guys. See you in a minute.